This episode is brought to you by the American Reptile and Plant Expo. It's Colorado's biggest reptile and plant show. Colorado natives host the All-American Reptile and Plant Expo on September 7th and 8th at Douglas County Fairgrounds. Shop oddities, terrariums, reptiles, amphibians, invertebrates, and plants from Reptile Basics, Arcadia, Pangea, and more. Tickets for the All-American Reptile and Plant Expo are available on Eventbrite now. Plus, use code CITY for 10% off. For more details, visit denverreptileshow.com. That's denverreptileshow.com.
Today on CityCast Denver, we're heading into a long holiday weekend, and the New York Times graced us with an updated take on their visitor's guide to the Mile High. So me and Bree and one of our favorite guests are talking about where you should really take out-of-towners this weekend. Plus, how come all these Denver businesses are moving to Englewood? And, of course, our wins and fails of the week. Today is Friday, August 30th. I'm Paul Caroli, and here's what Denver's talking about. Welcome back to CityCast Denver, the show about the city whose governor headlined a Kamala Harris fundraiser this week called Yimby-Chella. The other headliners included blogger Matt Iglesias, Maryland Governor Wes Moore, and a guy who takes pictures of cars in the bike lane.
This sounds like my worst nightmare.
Also, Vampire Weekend is going to be there.
Oh, if Ezra Koenig's going to be there, then it's not my worst nightmare all of a sudden.
Yeah, now it's a cool
now
show.
It's a cool thing.
He does seem like he'd be a Yimby, though, you know?
I was just thinking about it. We're going on this trip to Nantucket, and everything I know about that part of the country is from a Vampire Weekend song. I was like, Hyannisport? Of course I know where that is, because that's somewhere that they partied in college.
You're going to be doing the whole Oxford comma lifestyle.
That's right. Mansard Roofs and everything. Yeah.
Yeah, and all of their other songs that I can reference easily. Here I go.
They're such a great band. But
they are a great band.
That is not what Yimby-Chella is about. I'm just thinking that's like, it's just like urban planners, transit enthusiasts.
I know, it's so nerdy.
It's so nerdy.
I mean, good for Kamala Harris for getting the Yimbys on board. I don't know how she did it. Nothing about her screams Yimby to me.
No. They don't talk about that kind of stuff on the national level, really.
Maybe she does. She doesn't talk about much policy-wise.
Yeah.
Not yet, at least.
Yeah, I was going to say. We'll see.
I think there's an exclusive CNN interview happening at some point.
Where they're going to talk about.
They're going to really get into it. Housing policy.
Oh, good Lord.
Get her on zoning. Get her... Nail her.
Nothing gets the crowd riled up like zoning, am I right?
How does she feel about ADUs?
Oh, Lord. That's a whole other thing I do want to talk about at some point, because I am perplexed by people that don't like them. But that's another story for another day.
I can't imagine someone not liking it. Well, NIMBY-Palooza attendees, there's a whole session on ADU hate at NIMBY-Palooza, the rival.
Opposite.
The rival.
The Curmudgeons Festival.
Yeah, less fun. Anyway, it's Friday. We're here at the 5280 Magazine Studios, more beautiful than ever for reasons that we'll get into later in the show. Bree Davies is here. Hey, Bree.
Hi.
And we have a great guest here, a returning guest, one of our favorites.
Yes.
Lately had quite a bit. We've had you quite a bit.
You've had some great stories.
You have been. You've been crushing it. She's a staff writer for Westward. One of our favorite returning guests, Katie Cheshire. Welcome back.
Hello. Thanks so much.
Katie, Yimby-Chella, would you go?
I probably would go.
As a reporter?
Yeah, for my job.
Probably be a good story.
That's what it feels like. It feels like an assignment.
I wish it was an actual event and not like a Zoom meeting, which I think is what it actually was.
Oh, that sounds even more excruciating.
I know. I don't know how she's doing at Kamala with these Zoom fundraiser things. I don't know why people want to do this. They must be really excited about
that white
beating
dudes
Donald Trump.
For Harris one did really well on the fundraising side. So
they keep doing well.
People are showing up.
They keep doing well.
It's interesting.
Although, did you see the controversy that the disability advocates for Harris one went really, really badly?
No, what happened?
Basically, it seems like they wanted to talk about disability-related policy, and everyone was like, this is a meeting about how you can register to vote. And it sort of fell apart, so I don't know.
Oh, that's frustrating.
Yeah.
Oh, my gosh.
Well, that's politics, baby.
Yeah.
We got a little bit of business to talk about before we get into our top story. Number one, we're off on Labor Day, so don't expect a new episode.
We will not be performing podcast labor that day. So
And we hope that you're not working either and enjoying a long weekend.
Yeah.
But if not, we got a whole back catalog, help get you through. Great episodes. We'll be back on Tuesday. And also, separately, more exciting, we're giving away some tickets to the annual Denver Food and Wine Fest.
This has so many wild, cool things that happen during it.
Oh my God.
Competitions.
We went last year. It was my favorite second favorite food festival of the year. There was another one also great.
But it has a chance to become your first this year. The number one slot.
I think they're going to bring it. I mean, it was great. They've got like all the best chefs in town. They're going to bring, I saw Ludo Lefebvre was there last year. That superstar French celebrity chef guy. He was there with his restaurant, Chez Maggie. They're hosting a cocktail competition, the Shake and Break Showdown on September 5th. That's what we're giving away tickets to. And we're giving away 2 to an existing member. So if you're an existing member and you want to go, you just have to fill out the form in the show notes to let us know that you want them. And then if you are not a member, we would love for you to become a member. Maybe this is a good little nudge to become a member, support the show, help keep us going for years to come. And you get a chance to win 2 tickets to the Denver Food and Wine Fest's Shake and Break Cocktail Showdown on September 5th. All you have to do is join between now and September 3rd for a chance to win.
As little as $8 a month. That's a pretty good deal in general. And then maybe you get these tickets to this really cool event.
Yeah. And you definitely get an ad-free podcast feed, which is awesome. And our new members-only weekly events preview email on Monday afternoons, which I've been really enjoying. Great new feature. Anyway, let's get to our top story this week, which was your story, Katie, about Englewood. Is Englewood the new Denver? Seems to be the question on everybody's tongue the last couple weeks, because as of this recording, there could be more announcements today, but South Broadway stalwarts like Mutiny Information Cafe, Fancy Tiger, both moving south. They follow Trilata Fabrics and Craft Supplies, Brewability, a longtime bartender at Sputnik who opened Fellow Traveler down there a couple of years ago. Just feels like the whole South Broadway vibe is moving south. Katie, what's up? What's happening?
Yeah, basically, these businesses are moving to Englewood. They're keeping their Broadway addresses for the most part, and they are going to a place with cheaper rent, a smaller government that has more ability to listen to them, and they're still creating a really cool little stretch of street that you can go to. If you're a crafter, you will absolutely thrive there. If you are a vegetarian, you could thrive there. If you like diners, you will love it. I mean, it's really got something for everyone, even cigar smokers. So, yeah.
Army
People that need their
aficionados.
Can I just tell you guys, okay, so in the 90s when I was a raver, one of my phases, you couldn't get glow sticks anywhere but the Army surplus store.
Oh, man.
So we would go there to get to get glow sticks before raves. Also, camouflage, like Tank Girl was really big, right?
Sure.
And they had camouflage everything at the Army surplus store before it became sort of a fabric in regular clothing. I don't know how to explain it, but that's where
they
we
got Carhartts there.
Yeah, I mean,
that's
they have great
going.
stuff.
I go every year. I get a new Carhartt beanie or toque.
I love
for my
that
fellow Canadians out there. Katie, this is crazy. But before we get too much more into this, I think we should just define our terms because people use different terms to describe the areas we're talking about. There's some people say South Broadway, then there's something called South Broadway. Someone said in your story, North Broadway. What's what?
So when I first started reporting this story, I was really only talking to people on what some might call South Broadway, generally the Baker neighborhood, but also not quite. And the boundaries, if it's helpful, are from 2nd to Interstate 25 that we're talking about when we say Denver's Broadway. In the context of this story, obviously, there is much more on Broadway, but that was the boundary we set for this particular project. And then when we say Englewood's Broadway or South Broadway, that would be generally the 3400 block, but also the 3500 block has some really cool stuff.
It's kind of, I still feel like it's kind of vague nothing is set in stone with these. Definitely.
And if something really cool came up at, First and Broadway or, we're not going to say, well, you're not part of it. So.
Yeah, because I mean, if you think about it, those stores can kind of go all the way down to 6th where Wizard's Chest and Meininger's are. So, And also I'm thinking about this area that was called Antique Row for a long time, which is after the I-25 section all the way to like Evans, and there's a ton of stores there too.
Mm-hmm.
So
that's what I would call South
Broadway, where Maria Empanada, Turn of the Century Antiques.
Joy Hill.
Yeah.
But it's complicated.
Yeah.
It's complicated.
And basically the reason we picked those boundaries is there's an effort to create a business improvement district, and those will be the boundaries, theoretically, of that district. So it just kind of made sense.
And that sort of designation generally then is what solidifies the name. If you think about a lower downtown is an improvement district, or Rhino is an art district, a little different, but these are special taxing districts, basically.
Where the businesses get together, they all pitch in and do something for the community to benefit them all.
Yeah, it's like a fund or an organization that operates like additional cleaning services or neighborhood festival kind of things and street improvements. Like you'll see when we talk about this Englewood section, I'm thinking about right outside Brewability, there's this whole pedestrian walkway area that's been done in the last couple of years. And that was through sort of the downtown development authorities getting a grant to get that funded to get that there. So that was not infrastructure that the city was going to put in necessarily. That area got together to make that happen.
All right, well, let's talk more about that. So, because there's two things going on here. There's the push of businesses off of Denver's Broadway or South Broadway, and then there's the pull towards Englewood. Let's talk about the Englewood pull, Katie. What's happening that people want to go there?
Yeah, I mean, I think in the story I talk about multiple people I talked to who moved to Englewood basically went there and they had a good time and they were like, my business could be here. So I think part of it is just that what's there already is fun and it's cool. And then the other part is they have this downtown development authority. They built it about 3 years ago, and it doesn't just cover this particular stretch of Broadway. There's a couple other downtowny areas in Englewood, but this is one of their focuses. They call it the Paseo. So that's what they call the area that has really good pedestrian crossings. There's a big sort of awning with tables, and it's all public space outside Brewability. And then on the other side of the street, it's pretty close to Breakfast Queen. So they built that. They have money that they can give people, like grants to build signage when they move in. So if you need to do something to advertise your business, you can get help with that. They have different sorts of business help, like with security. They have a checklist that you can do. They'll connect you with police if you're having some sort of recurring crime problem. So just a lot of resources. If you're moving your local business there, they really want you to know that they're happy to have you.
I wonder about that first thing you said, though, about it just like feeling good. Because there were so many people you talked to who said that they went to Englewood and they were like, this feels like South Broadway 15 years ago. And Bree, I wanted to ask you about that because that's the South Broadway you talk about. Yeah,
I think that's alluding to sort of the eclectic nature of the businesses that you kind of talked about, Katie, like a cigar store, a vacuum repair store, but also a breakfast place, multiple bars, crafting places, just all these different things that make it attractive to go to that area. And I do want to be careful when talking about South Broadway that like it didn't just get invented in the 2000s, right? This was work. This is also sort of butts up against the historic oldest neighborhood in the city in Denver, right? The West Side. So that has always had its own rich culture. But this coming towards Broadway part really started in the late 70s when businesses were trying to sort of change the perception of what Broadway was. And I was in my early 20s when High Dive opened in 2003, and it was one of the first businesses that was open after like 6 p.m. I think that's the big determining thing here is like, it's not that Broadway didn't have businesses. That was also a great place for vintage shopping. It still is to a certain extent. But when I was in high school, that's why I went to that area, was to go vintage, like clothing shopping. But after 6 p.m., there was like maybe the Brown Barrel. There wasn't a lot open. And so when the High Dive came in, that's just started this interest, I think, from younger folks. Because the other thing is I'm noticing like Joe Phillips that owns Fellow Traveler and now has co-purchased Sputnik. Mm-hmm. I've known him for over 20 years. We hung out in the hipster crowd that hung out there. Yeah. And I think he just was hanging out there and was like, this is a viable place to have a business. And it was people of our age group that were just starting to do that. And that's where we got the Fancy Tigers and other stores like that. And so this is just like sort of an evolution that happens, but it really just takes those early steps of like, business improvement districts are complex. I don't want to overstate that. I worked in that field in urban planning in particular. We created business improvement districts. I have a lot of complicated feelings about them because they're often used sometimes as a mechanism to enforce stuff around homelessness. But they also can create these cool opportunities for businesses to get help doing things like you said, signage. So these kinds of things happen in different areas based on business owners wanting to invest in the community. And I think that the change over the last 20 years has been pretty gradual on South Broadway. And to me, it's been pretty amenable to the neighborhood itself. I think it's actually served people versus pushing people out. It doesn't mean things didn't get more expensive in Baker, for sure. I mean, when I was 21, you could rent a house in Baker for a couple $100. Not the case anymore. But on the other side of it, you have all these amenities on Broadway itself. So it's just been a slow evolution, but I think it's been a good one.
Yeah, I think what you're getting at here is like there's a lamentation happening for the end of a scene.
Of an era, yeah.
Yeah, like the High Dive coming in started this like very, cool, hip, kind of grungy scene.
They had great bands. They booked Vampire Weekend played there, speaking of. I mean, they were really early on in booking cool shows, and that's what helps create the culture, or at least create an iteration of culture there.
Did you hear from readers about this, Katie? Like people like upset about this change happening or that the end of that era?
We had a few on Facebook who talked about, as I think our headline was like, both places have big plans, and someone was like, big plans, like a $30 coffee shop and a McDonald's. And I was like, no, but I think that's definitely how people feel, that it is getting more expensive and it is getting less local. And Joe Phillips made a really good point to me. He said, the reason that it got more expensive is because everybody loved those like alt cool businesses. Everybody loves the High Dive. And for him, everybody loves Sputnik. And those businesses sort of created an area that suddenly outside investment wanted to invest in. And so it's sort of this double bind where you made something really cool and then that made people pay attention, and then that made it more expensive, and now it's harder to be really cool there.
Well, let's talk about some of the things that are pushing these businesses away though, because it's really cool, but not for everybody. Totally.
And one of the big things I heard from every business that moved was rent. Fancy Tiger is an employee-owned co-op. They don't have any sort of big corporate investors. They just could not afford to be there anymore, which is really sad. They now, on Broadway right now, places are renting from about $30 to $45 per square foot, which is giant. And, that's per month, your monthly rent. And so I think you got to make a certain amount of money to be there. And sometimes the ebbs and flows of business just don't allow for that. The other factor I heard a lot is more problems with crime. The police statistics show that generally crime is actually down in the area, but drug-related crimes are up by over 20%. And that's what so many people cited is we see more people using drugs. We see more people who are potentially suffering from overusing drugs, and those things, for good or for bad, detract from business.
I was going to say, they just push customers out for sure.
I saw someone on the subreddit talking about your story, and they shared an anecdote. I'm sorry for this person. I forgot your handle, your anonymous handle, but they shared an anecdote about going to a bar late at night on this strip of South Broadway and being followed home like 6 blocks by some guy who just like saw them getting a slice of pizza and like seemed on drugs. And this person was like, I don't feel comfortable going out to bars there anymore because of this. So I don't know. I mean, it's interesting that crime's actually going down there because this is definitely a narrative we've heard about this strip for at least a year. I mean, I remember the calzone guy, that whole situation with him being so upset about unhoused folks outside his business and just like getting really angry and almost violent with people.
And I do want to say too, I was thinking about some comments that Jim Norris made to you, one of the co-owners of Mutiny, where he was like, he sees that issue as well, but his frustration was he doesn't think that pushing homeless people to different areas I don't want to equate homelessness with drug use, but pushing folks out is not solving the problem. So I think he just made it clear that like encampment sweeps are not what he wants either, but he's seeing as a business owner, it's also a struggle to keep his block, literally keep the block clean. That's what I thought was interesting too, was like there's just more trash and stuff.
And we had heard from a lot of businesses that they feel when people got swept, particularly out of downtown Denver, those people ended up kind of wandering up the road to where Broadway is. And their perception is that some of the efforts to sort of clean things up downtown led to more, just trash,
issues,
urine,
that same
problems.
problem elsewhere.
Yeah.
This is an interesting segue. I want to talk about the bike lane. Speaking of Jim Norris, he said you quoted him as talking about how much it now takes him to clean up around the shop, including all the infrastructure they built for the Broadway bike lane, this big new jam of our bike network. And he said to you that the real hit, the quote, real hit that made business impossible for them was the installation of the Broadway bike lane, which I thought was particularly interesting because the Englewood people were talking about building the Broadway bike lane all the way down through Englewood. Yeah,
and I think that when people say the bike lane killed us, what they really mean is the construction of the bike lane killed them. I don't think most of them really have a problem now that the bike lane exists. Some qualms with parking a little bit existed, but in general, it was that construction took a very long time. It was not clear how people could get into businesses at all times. It very embarrassingly was down there one night and walked over a freshly poured section of concrete because I didn't know and the sign wasn't good. And so
is there a Katie footprint right there?
I went to check and I think that they fixed it because I was wearing my Doc Martens. So I was like, I'd be able to tell. And there was nothing.
Sorry about that. That would have been a real
stamp on South Broadway.
I wish. But yeah, so I just think it was a little difficult to navigate. If you were not me, maybe you would be really upset that you walked through concrete or there's barriers and you don't know how you can get to what you want to go to. And they said coming right on the back of the pandemic shutdowns when they already had lost a ton of their business, it was very hard to recover. So they couldn't count on a, post-shutdown bump when everybody could go back out and celebrate because the bike lane was being constructed. So it was basically for them about 4 years of you can't do business as you usually would. And that's very difficult.
Especially when you're a walk-up business like a coffee shop like Mutiny. You rely on foot traffic. And I agree with you. I don't think that Jim and other business owners' complaints was necessarily the bike lane, but construction anywhere, any kind, disrupts businesses. We see the same thing. But I did find most of the businesses in your in this piece very diplomatic about it. It was like, these are issues caused by, but this is not the root of the problem. It's not that they don't want better infrastructure. It's also, Jim talked about like sweeping around a bike lane and all these cement pieces is just more cumbersome and it takes more time and like it's just an added thing they have to do as a small business. So I don't know. I think the empathy is there for the businesses. It's just a matter of what do they do now? Well, like Mutiny, move somewhere else.
Yeah. I learned an interesting fact about Mutiny recently. Bree, you might know this. I had no idea this was the story, but when I learned that when Matt and Jim bought Mutiny from the previous owners, what included in what they bought was a basement full of old books. Like that's where all the old books came from.
Oh yeah.
And that they never like bought new old books. Like they've just, as they sold books from the stacks, they just slowly brought them up from the basement. And a few years ago, they cleaned it out. It was empty.
Oh wow.
It was successful. And then that's when they started like changing the interior of the store more and making more upgrades with the comic selection and stuff.
And I will say something, the upgrades in general also are something that sound really exciting for this move for Mutiny, right? They were like, guess what, guys? We get air conditioning, accessible restrooms.
Huge.
We've always wanted a drinking fountain, some really basic needs that weren't being met that I think could make it an even better opportunity for customers. If you'd go a little bit further down, and I think it's not a bad thing at all.
Well, speak more to that, Brie, because I think there's a lot of people having feelings about this.
Absolutely. And I don't want to negate those feelings. I definitely see that transition being rough. And also don't want to undermine the fact that rent is a real problem. I mean, we saw Soul Tribe close as well. The tattoo shop once owned by Alicia Cardenas. We've seen some other businesses be forced to move because of affordability. And it is true. That transition can go really wrong where things become so unaffordable that then it's not fun because you don't want to go down there. I mean, there's a real estate company that has a storefront now that's very bright and very just so a big presence. And that to me was a big sign that was like, ooh, this isn't cool anymore. So I can see for the existing businesses, but like High Dive's not going anywhere. Sputnik's not going anywhere. Those places, you couldn't change them if you tried. They have a great, natural, awesome environment. As to what happens on the rest of the blocks, that's going to be questionable. But at this moment, I feel like even though South Broadway is losing really crucial places like Fancy Tiger and Mutiny, it's still retaining what makes it cool. And now we're just getting to see an expansion of that into another cool part of town. That part of Englewood, I love that part of Englewood. It's so cute. I was going down there already because huge fan of Brewability and huge fan of Gallo, the Italian restaurant, and Rico's. I do want to give Rico's a little shout out too.
The pizza place?
Yeah.
I never actually been.
Oh, it's so cute on the inside.
I gotta go.
It's full of New York knickknacks. It's adorable.
All right. Well, I think we should leave it there. Take one quick break, and then we'll be back to talk about tourists coming to town. Labor Day weekend, big holiday travel weekend. This episode is brought to you by Denver Health. Because school's back in session, and inevitably, we all know, that means there's going to be some kind of bug going around. So I've got a question for the parents out there. Did you know that Denver Health offers a free convenience service right in your child's school? They're called School-Based Health Centers, or SBHCs, and they're here to keep your kids healthy. Imagine having a doctor's office, mental health services, dental and preventative care, all available right at your kid's school. That's what Denver Health's SBHCs offer to students at Denver Public Schools. There's no need to take time off work or worry about long waits. Healthcare is there when your child needs it. With healthcare on campus, students miss fewer classes, stay healthier, and perform better academically. Denver Health's pediatric team saw more than 16,000 students last year. Care is available at no cost to families, and siblings of DPS students up to the age of 21 can receive care at no cost as well. Visit denverhealth.org/SBHC to learn more today. That's denverhealth.org/SBHC. All right, and we're back. Less than a year after we roasted the New York Times mercilessly for their just totally out of touch visitor's guide to Denver that they published probably 6 years ago.
They landed at DIA, went to Rhino, and then went back to DIA. That's what it felt like.
Well, they're back this week with an update. They must have heard what we said, and they have a new 36 Hours in Denver guide, thanks to local writer Steve Knopper. He put together a list of some longtime faves like Red Rocks and Little Man Ice Cream, as well as some instant classics, I would say, like Meow Wolf's Convergence Station and Convivio Cafe. Katie, let's talk about this. What did you think of the list?
I thought it was surprisingly great. There are definitely places that I would take people. I felt like it covered some of the key areas of the city. You know, obviously there are differing opinions that I have, but in general, I felt like it was just so much better than the last guide that you have to praise.
Interesting. That's very nice of you to say. You said differing opinions, though. And let's drill down onto that. What were these? Tell me about those.
I guess I'm going to be public with my incredibly controversial opinion, which is that I don't like Little Man Ice Cream.
Bring it on. Go off.
Oh my gosh. I know who's going to be mad about this.
A lot of people.
Our friend of the show,
JD Lopez is going to be
huge
very mad.
Little Man stan.
Well, and to be clear, local business, great business. They do a lot of wonderful things. No hate there. But the ice cream itself, to me, is not creamy enough. I want it to be more like luscious whenever I eat it. And I would absolutely never stand in a line of more than like maybe 7 people to get ice cream either. And I just feel like it's not even close to worth it. Like,
wow.
Do you have a favorite?
Yeah, where's your spot?
I live very close to Licks, so I love Licks.
Yeah, Licks is
Girl
very
after my
cool.
own heart. Thank you. I will wait in that line too.
Yes, I was trying to think of the longest line I've waited in at Licks. I was like probably 7 people, so that's why I said that. And in college, we would always go to Sweet Cow, so that is the nostalgic love of mine as well.
You know, I was walking on 17th last week. I went to that new Mexican place. I can't say it. It's called Xiquuita, Chiquita maybe. Feels not right. But it was weird to see Sweet Action's name on top of that ice cream place instead of Frozen Matter. It's like I always knew that as Frozen Matter. And then the the speakeasy. Anyway, that's not what we're talking about. My favorite right now is Right Cream, I think, down by Harvard College. Love Right Cream. Bree, how about you? What did you think about this new 36 Hours in Denver?
I thought it was fine. It didn't really strike me either way. I think, as usual, I think these lists always lean more on new businesses versus legacy businesses. So I'm like, this isn't really what I would do. But I found it perplexing that he said stop by the historic Elitch Theater. Like, what are you going to look at it in the parking lot of the Sprouts? Like, I love it, but like you can't go in it.
I mean, like twice a summer, I think they'll show a movie in there.
If
you plan your trip around that would be cool, probably.
I mean, I feel like this was sort of the sad cry of like, where do you take someone in Denver to show them something historic? Because we just don't have that much left. But then he went on to talk about the Oriental Theater and the Mayan Theater and the Gothic Theater. And we are a city that is very lucky to have these transformed old movie houses into other uses, which is cool. But I don't know. I just was like meh about this list. It didn't really do anything for me.
Yeah, that's kind of how I felt too. I thought it was good. And then I was like, maybe just Denver itself is like not a great place to spend 36 hours. I don't know.
Well, I think people come here and then go to the mountains.
That's
too.
what I was thinking. Like you'd go to Red Rocks maybe, but then you'd go to Aspen or you go to
or Vail or Breck
you go skiing.
But that's
what people come here
whatever.
for. It's a great place to live.
I do want to point out this one sentence that like made me so angry. After a long walk through idyllic City Park, head to the nondescript concrete plaza at East Colfax Avenue and Columbine Street. It may look like any other urban street corner, but it happens to be the oasis for culture lovers. Twist and Shout, Tattered Cover, Steve Film Center. I'm sorry, sir, nondescript concrete plaza? Are you talking about the historic Lowenstein Theater that I think developer Charlie Woolley did a great job of integrating into? This is an adaptive reuse. I was like,
yeah,
that's not accurate.
A little bit of that.
was a little annoyed.
You know what I liked in that section was that Patrick Brown, the owner of Twist and Shout, has apparently been calling that little square called the Cultureplex. Katie, did you like that name? I had never heard that before.
I liked it. I also had never heard it, but I kind of agree with Bree. One thing that I disliked about the piece was a few of the descriptions. I felt like a little try-hardy, and I've been to Inspire Boutique on Tennyson, and in the story it was described as like a modern cowgirl or something, and I was like, that is in no way how I would describe the aesthetic of that store. So I was like, this is a great shout out, but it's not how I would describe it. So maybe that is part of it, is like these are good places, but it not for the exact reasons that
it's not really selling it.
I have one on that point, actually. There's a quote he wrote, Denver is a great city for walking, which I totally agree. He had some good spots, long walks. But one of the places he said was whether along its Cherry Creek Trail, which snakes through downtown, or its many scenic park loops. I would not say that the Cherry Creek Trail is good for walking.
Good Lord, no. If you want to get hit by a cyclist.
Or an e-bike zipping past you. That is a bike highway. I would not recommend it for walking.
Yeah, I get annoyed, honestly, when I'm biking and someone is walking down there. I'm like, get out of the way.
It's really just
a biker yelled at me recently. I was down there going just too slow.
Me.
Yeah. No.
I mean, that's a whole other conversation. Also, sometimes people that ride that trail are real dicks. So there's also just
I have also been yelled at 100%. For going too slow on my bike on that trail.
Totally. So. The spandex dudes that like are using it as a raceway. I'm like, sir, this is a commuter trail.
Like, I'm trying to get to Meow Wolf. I can't.
I think this is a sign of that we have a great piece of bike infrastructure. That people are willing to drop the normal camaraderie of biker to biker and be full on angry at each other instead. Here's another one. I liked his suggestion to walk around Sloan's Lake as an attraction. I'm getting a grimace from Bree right now.
I am such a Sloan's Lake hater, and I feel like such a jerk about it. But there's not enough. No. There's not enough tree shade on it. It's like 1,000,000 degrees.
It's a little hot.
And it stinks most. Like
that's true. There has been a stink lately.
I love Sloan's Lake. I love that area. I love the houses along there are beautiful, but like it's not my favorite park to walk around.
I like it in the early morning. That's when I have taken visitors for a walk there. And as I've said on the show, I think a long time ago, a breakfast at Rupert's on the edge, looking out over Sloan's Lake, maybe looking at the skyline while you're walking. It's early, it's not so hot and sunny. That's a really nice thing to do with visitors, because there's also a lot of stories to tell about Sloan's Lake.
It is a cool...
You got the old Manhattan Beach amusement park, Roger the elephant.
the Lake Middle School is right over there. It's a gorgeous building if you just are into looking at buildings. And also, if I'm on that side of town over there, I'm getting probably a family pack from Tamale Kitchen. So also delicious. Yeah, I thought this was okay. You know what? I didn't even look and see what the Mexican food offerings are. That's really a judgment call I make on things. It's how people know Colorado Mexican food. But
I didn't either. I
didn't notice anything. That might be what's missing.
The place that I thought was a good rec, I haven't been yet, is U.S. Thai in Edgewater. Have either of you been to U.S. Thai?
Oh, yes.
Have you? I haven't, and everybody says I live in an area that has good Thai food, so I don't venture there. But
tell us.
It is my number one Thai place in all of Denver. I've had many times there in college, sober and drunk, always great. The little area that it's in just got redone by the city of Edgewater. They put really big pedestrian walkways, bike lanes, extended the sidewalks. Every place is allowed to have patio seating now. So it's a really great area. I actually do take people there. That was one of my highlights of the list. And the people at US Thai Cafe are so amazing. The service is great. The food tastes great. Last year, I think they had some difficulty paying rent, and I was like on edge going there like once a week because I was like, I have to go as much as I can. I've done that
when I know my favorite restaurant is about to. I did this with Andres in Cherry Creek for like 2 months. I was just going every day because I know you're going to be
Okay,
gone.
tangent. Now that you said Cherry Creek, that was my other disagreement with the piece. Is it mentioned a hotel in Cherry Creek that you could stay in, and I was like, in no way would I tell someone to stay in Cherry Creek. My in-laws recently did that, and it was just really hard. Like, the hotels are nice there, but there's just not a lot of stuff that you can go to easily. If you want to walk, it's not a good place to stay. So that was my other big disagreement.
Yeah, I didn't even notice the Cherry Creek.
They recommended the Clayton Hotel, the Members Club Hotel, where I once almost became a member, sort of accidentally.
Really funny.
Yeah, we'll put a link to that episode in the show notes.
I just Control-F this article, and there is no mention of Mexican food in it. So this has been now null and void. This list is null and void to me. Does not exist.
It's not. That's an oversight. We got great Mexican food.
We do.
You got to go to El Taco de Mexico, I think.
You know me. I'm always next door to El Noa.
But I went to El Taco de Mexico last night because Westward updated our taco list and I had to go instantly. But I think with these pieces, what I always remind myself is this is not for us.
Right.
It's for people who are not familiar with Denver. And so looking at it from that perspective, I'm like, this is a pretty good guide. No one's going to be disappointed. Maybe you won't have your mind absolutely blown, but it's a very safe list.
You can hit some good points.
Yeah.
Some good museums, some good restaurants, some good shopping. But yeah, I agree. It's sort of a survey versus a specific taste guide.
Bree, do you have a place that you always will take visitors? Like Lakeside. We can talk about Lakeside.
Lakeside used to be it. I mean, my nervousness around it being in this, which it is not, and I'm kind of glad, is like, it's not doing awesome right now. And I really find Lakeside to be a hard sell without the roller coaster. Unless you're an old buildings looky-loo like myself, it's not really, it's kind of missing its pizzazz without the cyclone. I mean, I love Lakeside, but that's absolutely where I take people. And then we usually get Mexican food.
We at Westward actually asked the author why he didn't include Lakeside. And he said that he loved it and he wanted to include it, but because it closes soon, it didn't make sense.
Which I get. I mean, because it's going to be closed for the season. But he's a North Side guy, so I would have expected that too. So it's good that he's aware of it.
For the record, it is open for a few more weeks on weekends, I think through mid-September.
Yeah.
If you haven't been this season.
I haven't. I'm too sad.
Yeah, I had never ended up going either. I got so excited about it when we did that show about the roller coaster being in bad shape, and then it was like, never ended up going.
Local writer Manuel Aragon, who's also just this great photographer, just took his family one day a couple weeks ago and then posted these incredible pictures. And I was like, okay, now I remember why I love Lakeside.
Katie, how about you? Is there like a one place you have to take visitors?
I think it really depends on the visitor.
Yeah.
Which is the difficulty of a guide. Like when my grandparents come, we go to the library at Regis and we look at like the collection of Santos that they have. But I would absolutely never do that with
your friend
anyone
visiting
else.
from New York or whatever.
Exactly.
Bachelorette party.
Yeah, and it's like some of my friends, I'm like, we should go out on Colfax. That's what I like
That's what I was
do
just
to
thinking.
take my like age group friends.
You want to go to some cool bars that really have a feeling or a vibe.
But
and it's
I would
Colfax.
say the most broad sweeping place is Lakeview Lounge because parents really like it. People my age like it. It has that sort of like family old style feel, but it is still really cool.
And it's a view of Sloan's Lake.
Nice. My parents are coming in a few weeks. I'm trying to think about where I could take them that's new.
I like the Regis Library. That's
Yeah.
a new one
Maybe
for
the
me.
Regis Library. My dad would love it. He loves going to college campuses when we go to new cities.
No, I'm serious. People really like it. I mean, you have to be the right demographic, obviously. But for that demographic, it really, really hits.
Well, also college campuses, just a lot of different architecture.
Some of them are beautiful. They're very different in different cities. I get what he's an academic, lifelong academic. He spent his life on college campuses, so he's a connoisseur. Anyway, yeah. So that was fun. Great list. We'll put a link in the show notes. Let us know what you think. Where do you like to take visitors? Also, maybe more fun, what did the New York Times get wrong? And what did they get right? Let us know on the 36 Hours in Denver hotline. Leave us your name, your neighborhood. The number is 720-500-5418. Again, 36 Hours in Denver hotline is open at 720-500-5418. We're going to take one more break and we're going to come back and do wins and fails.
This episode is brought to you by the Colfax Avenue Business Improvement District. Come on down to Denver's most iconic street, Saturday, September 7th for the 2024 Colfax Crawl. This bar crawl is like none other, with 5 unique tracks to suit your taste. Beer lovers, dive bars, mocktails, queer bars, and wine and cocktails. Enjoy exclusive specials at popular spots like Bar Max, Brews Off Facts, The Squire, the newly opened Champagne Tiger, and more. I can't wait to go to Champagne Tiger, to be honest with you. What's their theme? Bougie Ratchet? Me. If there's a sober version of Bougie and Ratchet, it's me. Gather your crew and experience Denver's nightlife like never before. Because this is more than a bar crawl. It's a Colfax adventure. This event is poppin', so be sure to secure your spot before it sells out. Get your tickets now at multipass.com/ColfaxCrawl2024. That's multipass.com/ColfaxCrawl2024.
All right, we're back. Time for the best way to end the week. Rocky Mountain highs and lows, aka our wins and fails of the week. Each of us brought a recent local something, maybe a news story, maybe just something we saw on the street on the way here, and we're going to talk about them. And we're going to start with fails. Bree, would you do the honors?
Yeah, Katie, your colleague Benito Kelty wrote this really sad profile of a gentleman named Joe Henry who was hired as a handyman at the Brown Palace. He was so excited. He was so excited to get this job, and he lost his housing in the process of getting this job. And so he had gone from he had a roommate who overdosed and died, and then he couldn't afford his rent because he didn't have a roommate anymore. And then he was living in his car, and his car was stolen. And he eventually ended up sleeping in the Brown Palace at night in unoccupied rooms.
Oh my God.
Because he needed somewhere to stay, and he was already there. It was his job. And unfortunately he was discovered and he was fired, and he died by suicide in the last week. And I mean, I think the series of events that Benito profiled in this piece about him, I can imagine felt very stressful. And it was just made me so sad because he said, having spent most of his life in Denver, he considered the Brown Palace an icon and felt like the man of the hour when he got the job. And so it was such a sad story, but also this reminder that homelessness is not a fault of someone's character. It happens to people. And it just felt like a failure of our system here, where we had a gentleman who had a job. He was so proud of it. And then he tried to do what he could to stay housed. And so my heart goes out to Joe Henry's family.
Wow, that is quite a story.
Yeah.
And
I actually cried when I saw
it was really
that
rough.
he had died, because it was just...
He had been trying so hard and couldn't make it work, So. Paul, what about you?
Well, mine's a little bit different. Mine is definitely a fail for the world, for Denver, for most of us, but a win for whoever the asshole is that figured out you could use AI to make YouTube content that almost 2 million people will watch that is completely based on lies and absolutely nothing. I learned about this from our friend Elizabeth Hernandez in the Denver Post, who found a video on YouTube with the title "Husband's Secret Gay Love Affair with Stepson Ends in Grisly Murder," which is a 20-minute. Did you see this, Katie?
I did.
Did you watch the video?
Not the whole thing.
But you saw some of it, right?
I couldn't make it through. Yeah.
It's brutal. Mm-hmm. It's so obvious.
Yeah.
It's so obvious that it's AI.
Oh, we'll put a clip in it.
Okay.
We're not going to link to this garbage, but we'll put a clip so people can see this. And what you'll hear is a story that sounds like one of these. I mean, it's an AI version of a true crime story that takes place in Littleton. That's the local tie here. It's supposedly a story about this like real estate guy, and it's
I love that
a
Elizabeth
principal
was like,
of a high school.
Elizabeth was in the story was just like, so I Googled it and there was nothing. That's all she had to do was like, there's literally no story matching up with this description in any way at any news outlet.
Yeah, I mean, well, she didn't just Google. She talked to like the police department. She talked to everybody who was like would have been involved, and like it's just completely false.
It's really scary.
What I did is I watched the video. Oh. I saw some of it. I was like, this is obvious. I looked at the comments, and they're like, ridiculous that this is real people who would say this. Maybe this is AI too, but someone who's
AI
like
talking to itself.
I am absolutely appalled that you're calling it a relationship with his stepson. That's flat out pedophilia abuse, like responding to the content of this fake story. Like, come on. How passive do you have to be with your media? I guess that's the world these days. But then here's where this thing got weirder for me, because I realized I was not watching the one with almost 2 million views. I was watching a video with the exact same title with about 6,000 views that was posted even more recently from an account with the same name, True Crime Case Files. So they're not just like posting fake videos, they're iterating.
I was going to say, this is what has been talked about by tech journalists for a long time, is that we're at the end of this version of the internet, because so much of the content is recycled garbage on garbage on garbage on garbage on garbage on garbage. And you're not even looking at anything remotely real in the content itself, but then it's also just farmed out.
It's scary. Because like the version that got popular, very bad. And then the version I watched, a little bit better. The pictures were a little bit better. The video,
weird.
The fake
so it wasn't
videos were a
just
little
like
bit
a
better.
Screen grab
No,
video.
it was. I think it was the same people who made it, but it was just refined, and it was a little shorter. It was a little tighter.
Well, they're figuring out how to. I mean, YouTube's monetized, so they're just making money.
Yeah.
No, I'm like very much a boomer with this. I'm like, we should ban AI. There's no reason for that to exist. Like, I want none of that ever to happen, which I know is like somewhat a closed-minded thing, but I'm just like,
I just want
so
platforms
bad
to take these kind of issues more seriously. That's where I'm at with it.
I think
like,
that's
it
where the
cannot be
leverage
up to
is.
the consumer.
I think that's what the leverage is, because the ad I saw before the video was for hotels.com.
Ooh.
And I don't think this speaks well to hotels.com,
No.
that they're advertising up against a completely fake true crime story that didn't happen.
Yeah.
So if I worked for hotels.com and I was considering my advertising spend for the year, I would look at something like CityCast Denver and maybe not youtube.com.
There you go. CityCast Denver /advertise. No.
Katie, what's your fail this week?
My fail this week is going back to Broadway. I wrote about this. There are 4 blocks of Broadway and Lincoln, and it's just the sides of the street that border each other, that have had over 10 power outages this year, all of them for at least 4 hours, if not more. And Excel told me as a journalist, the various reasons that these outages existed, but all that the people who lived there could get from the power company was that squirrels were hungry for power lines and keep disrupting their power.
What?
And yes.
Wouldn't you think that would be a nationwide problem if it was really the issue?
Yeah, well, one of the residents I talked to was like, there's no way we have kamikaze squirrels on this 4 blocks, and
nowhere
on
else.
The other side of the street, it's fine. And the next block over, it's fine. And so, most of the power outages are not due to squirrels, is what I discovered. But I think the biggest fail to me is just the communication. Like, why is that what people were told? And when these power outages happen, why aren't they sort of informed better about what's going on?
That is so. Can you imagine? Oh yeah, it was Squirrels.
Yeah.
That's Excel's PR department. Squirrels. That's all it is.
Well, and the interesting part is they were told that not only by the customer service line, but by one of the maintenance people who came out to fix it. So I think
Come on.
Not great.
Come on.
Not great. Let's move on to wins. I would be happy to go first.
Go for it, Paul.
I want to just shout out some good news for downtown that I saw this week. I did take a walk up and down 16th Street Mall this morning, and it is god awful. There's construction everywhere. It's very unpleasant. But there's good news. Axios Denver reported that Denver's office attendance has hit a post-pandemic high in July. So people are returning to work. They keep coming back.
Really?
So I think that's the root cause of the problem as far as I can tell, and
Even
that seems to be
though
getting better.
Data said this month also that it had the highest vacancy rate downtown. We hit another high.
Well, I think that's a lagging indicator.
Okay.
I think the vacancy rate, like that's leases expiring,
Sure.
right?
That's fair.
So that's leases expiring because people
Versus just, like,
stopped coming
office
to work
attendance.
years ago, right? Office attendance coming back. I think this is a good sign. I think
Okay.
this is part of the turnaround.
I mean,
I hope.
they just opened a new coffee shop in the building we're in.
That's
Was
my
that your
next
win?
one. Yes,
Okay.
that the long-awaited coffee shop in our lobby is finally open this morning.
That's awesome.
And I saw this last night. Do you follow Work From Home Denver, Katie, on Instagram? This is one of the local food people.
Work from Denver.
Work from Denver. Yeah.
Yes.
So last night I saw a post from her. I don't know if you saw this, but she was at this cute coffee shop that was very like, it was like a cute espresso bar with plants and stuff. And I was like, that's the lobby of the office I work.
And it's
Oh my
awesome.
God.
We've been waiting for this coffee shop for like a year
Yeah.
because they kept saying it was coming and then it appeared and it's so busy already. It's great.
Yeah. So, shout out to them.
Shout out to Queen City.
Anyway, that's what I got. Good news for downtown this week.
Yeah, my win is similar, which is that they are opening 3 more blocks of the 16th Street Mall this week
Oh, they are.
that are
Oh.
finished. They're completed. They're looking good. I drove by them on my way here. And yeah, I'm just so happy. I feel like it's been really hard, similar to the Broadway people. You had the pandemic and all the office people left. And then you had this construction that made it hard for tourists and foot traffic. So I'm just really happy. Every time they open more, I'm going to be really happy. And
It does look beautiful once
they're
the
doing
sections
a
are
great
open.
job. They're
Yeah.
they're nice. Do you know which 3 blocks? Is it the ones that are kind of by Union Station?
Well, I know that it's this right here off of Larimer. It's the 2 bordering, and then I think 1 more farther up.
Cool.
Yeah, I think that makes sense. Because like I was from the Western shop all the way to Civic Center was still a nightmare.
Was still, yeah.
But shops are all with the signs. They're just like, we're closed until whenever this is
Till
over.
hell freezes over. Yeah.
Yeah. Brie, what's your win?
Sure. So last weekend, country musician Scott McCreery was performing at the Colorado State Fair, and he saw a man hit a woman in the crowd, but he stopped the show and pointed it out and waited for security to remove this person. And I mean, it's a weird win, but I just appreciate, I think partially I'm also listening to this series on the downfall that was Woodstock 99 and like how terribly managed it was and how the bands got blamed and all this stuff. And I just thought it was cool to see a musician, especially a male musician, stop in that moment and stop something from happening to somebody and pointing it out and just saying like, this is not cool. And it was just a nice reminder that like, that is something that you can do on a stage when you're seeing something happen. You have some power there. And I thought it was really admirable of him to do that.
That is cool. What's this person's name again?
His name's Scott McCreery. I think he was
Scott
a winner of
McCreery.
American Idol like a decade ago or something. Yeah, I didn't recognize his name, but sounds like a cool dude.
Do you know Scott McCreery, Katie?
I do not, but I also saw this, and I also thought it was great.
It seems like such a simple thing, but like, I don't know, Katie, you've been a woman in a crowd where you've either witnessed something super weird happening to someone next to you or it's happened to you. And it just feels nice to know other people are looking out for you. And it's just something that doesn't happen that often in crowds. So just shout out to him.
That is a nice win.
Yeah.
I have a little bonus win here. We have to talk about this before we end the show. A tweet from @Splenda.
My favorite brand of fake sugar. I'm a real Splenda freak.
at Splenda writes @Coco Davies, which is the tag
Which
you used to
may
use.
or may
Brie.
not be my Twitter
Yeah.
handle anymore.
They say, I was able to follow your order just fine. A half venti decaf Americano, extra ice, vanilla, sweet cream, cold foam, 2 Splenda sounds just wonderful to me.
This is the Splenda account responding to a blooper on the show earlier this week where Paul was like, I don't understand your Starbucks order. So shout out to the Splenda account operator.
That's pretty nice. That was fun. That was fun.
So cute.
All right. Well, yeah. So become a member today for a chance to win free tickets to that cocktail competition at the Food and Wine Festival. And sign up if you are a member. Fill out that form in the show notes. Just one last reminder to do that. But yeah, here we are at the end of the show. Katie Cheshire, thank you so much for joining us.
Yeah, thank you for having me.
Thanks, guys.
See you next time. That's all for today here on CityCast Denver. Our producers this week were Lizzie Goldsmith, Olivia Jewel Love, and me, Paul Caroli. Peyton Garcia writes our morning newsletter, Hey Denver. Bree Davies is our host. Our music is by Los Mocochetes, with additional mixing by Tyler Lindgren. If you haven't already, subscribe to the show wherever you get your podcasts, follow us on Instagram at CityCast Denver, and tell Steve Knopper about us the next time you see him. You can sign up for that daily newsletter I mentioned and learn more about us at denver.citycast.fm. See y'all next week. After the long weekend, we'll be back in your feeds on Tuesday morning. I had one other joke for the opening that I liked. Can I do it now? Is that okay?
Yep, go for it.
This is great audience. 25%. Welcome back to CityCast Denver, the show about the state whose Republican Party is embroiled in a power struggle, leaving politics nerds to wait with bated breath to find out which transphobe will lead them to their next electoral defeat.